everyone, and welcome to another very exciting episode of Loss of Lieutenant. This is episode 139, where tonight we'll be focusing on one of the underratedly trickier aspects of list building in Infinity, which is the nebulous concept of a Group 2. My name is Jordan, and I will be your host tonight, joined by Loss of Lieutenant's resident... Jesus Christ, I am okay! Resident, stats guy, resident smartest person in the room at any one time, Nick.
Oh, thank you. Hello.
And Tristan, who the stress of running this show has clearly robbed him of all of his hair, apparently.
Yeah, I'm going mad.
He's going fucking mad being here with all of us. However, before we do get into the main body of tonight's show, we do have some announcements to get through. First of all, we have our upcoming events, and they're still in the wrong order.
Oh yeah, copy paste.
God damn it. So first of all, the one we'll be happening sooner, we have Arkfinity 2025 from the 3rd to the 4th of May at the Sandown Racecourse in Melbourne. It is 300 points with Reinforced Command, which means there is no loss of lieutenant in play. So if you have any middling active lieutenants that you are an absolute stand for, looking at you, the Hatamoto, get out, get down. However, the tickets are available from the 30th of January, about $100. Fully painted and based is a requirement, as the event of Ark is very heavily focused around the hobby aspect of the war games that we play. Last year we saw some spectacular looking display boards make their way out, and we're hoping to see even better ones this year, and with an even better turnout now that more people have their fully painted armies. The missions are Biotech 4, Highly Classified, Annihilation, Supremacy, and Mega Turret, with a N5 update soon to be released that is being worked on behind the scenes to hopefully make it a more balanced mission for such an event. As a reminder, it is an event focused on fun and sportsmanship and hobby, and is maybe not the best place if you are looking to step on next and step on next exclusively. Which is why Tristan is TOing and not playing, as he is the well-known shark in the waters. This is what you get for letting me host.
I'm a little Gumby shark.
He's the little Gumby shark. And going off of Arkfinity, following that, we have Border Bash from the 7th to the 8th of June, which is the King's Birthday long weekend, at the Mirrabina Community Centre in Lavington. This is the second time Border Bash is going to be running, and it is one of the best events in Australia. The venue is lovely. There is a walk-in fridge where we store all of the booze. It is immaculate. The missions for that are Cryogenics, Mind Wipe, Countermeasures, Panic Room, and the Armory, which is fucking evil.
Yes.
There is some evil shit going on there. Cryogenics is there, so that's pretty cool, though. Not going to complain too much about that. And heading across the world with the next few events, we have the Tidewater Tempest 2025 at the 8th of March at World's Best Comics in Newport News, Virginia. It's a satellite tournament. It is 3 rounds of Resilience Ops, 300 points, space limited to 50 players. We have the Talvisoda Satellite from the 15th to the 16th of March in Helsinki, Finland. It is a satellite tournament with the mission lineup being Biotech for Unmasking Supplies, Frostbite, and Firefight with a custom mission edit. Why is there so much Biotech 4 this year, and who has an issue with us?
There's no options.
There's so much Biotech 4, good god. And we have one new event, the Cyber Baltic 2025, from the 26th to the 27th of April in Riga, Latvia. There's a satellite tournament with the mission lineup being Supplies, Unmasking, Acquisition, Extraction, which is a custom mission, Supremacy, and no QAZ creatures. Well, fuck you, Latvia. We love QAZ.
That's a really strange choice.
Which one of the TOs lost to a fucking QAZ creature?
Someone lost an Achilles to a QAZ creature.
Someone absolutely lost an Achilles or some shit to a QAZ creature. And zooming back into Australia for a second, we do have one more event, which is the Slow Grow 2025. It is a 3 events, each of them 3 rounds. The first round being 150 points, being tomorrow, the 2nd of March, at the Gaming Arena with 150 points, with the missions being Battleground, Cutthroat, Superiority, Uplink Center. Rules are the 50-point max per unit, 2 Impetuous units, max 1 Ferroware Impersonator, and 1 Combat Group limited insertion. And then round 2 will be the 22nd of March at the Gaming Arena, moving up to 225 points, 4.5 SWIC on close to standard size game tables. and the missions will be Arkfinity related. And then the third and final round on the 12th of April at the Gaming Arena with your standard 300 point, 6 Swick, 48 by 48 tables, and the missions will once again be related to Arkfinity. Oh my god, alright, now we've gotten through all of that. Nick, this episode is your baby. What are we talking about tonight?
So, we are talking about Group 2. Probably best to start off with, why are we talking about Group 2? What is it so special? Group 2 is one of those unique list writing challenges of Infinity. You're forced to try to imperfectly balance 15 models into 2 groups. And I can't think of any other war games that do that. Like, there's no correct solution to how to make that balance. And
Not in a war game with like multiple activations is a possibility.
Yes. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. So, want to talk about Group 2 partly because, yes, it's a unique experience in building lists in Infinity, but we can also look at some basic list building ideas as well. And because Group 2 is the smaller one, we should be able to better see how some of those play out. What are you guys' opinions on building with Group 2?
I think it's weirdly one of like the list building fundamentals, which has changed more dramatically going from N4 to N5 than what I was expecting. Now that there are some very clearly defined, these are good things to do with Group 2s, with like turret spam and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the tags that you would usually see populating a Group 2 seem to have migrated up to Group 1.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. There are definitely some lists that love a Group 2 tag.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. It just seems less easier to do than it was last edition.
Yeah. I think it's probably one of the more underrated aspects of list building. I think a lot of people focus on their Group 1, kind of try and perfect that, and then Group 2, they just kind of throw the leftovers, or these are my aero bits, or these are the stuff that's, I'm willing to let it die, so my Group 1 kind of maintains that max orders. Which,
I mean,
yeah.
People can't even agree on what like the correct order split is. It's 9-6, by the way. That is the correct split of orders. But
I agree.
That aside.
Yeah, and like because it's a smaller group, it can be more difficult to build well because it's less forgiving. If you've got 9 or 10 models, you could have models in there that don't work or are in the wrong group, and you won't notice it because there's still plenty to do. If you've only got 5 models and 1 or 2 of them isn't functional in that group, you'll feel it much more quickly when other models start to go down.
Yep.
Peter. So, with Group 2, we should probably talk about what we mean by Group 2, because I don't think we're referring to just the second group. It's specifically the smaller of the 2 battle groups. I know there are some people out there who really like to have a 5-person Group 1 and a 10-person Group 2.
No, those people are psychopaths.
Yes.
So we're going to be looking at the smaller 2, so like 10-5 splits, 9-6 splits, and the either 5 or 6 member group of those. Building for an 8-7 split is
different game.
Different because you're balancing 2 more equal groups.
Yes. Completely different kettle of fish.
Yes. So, I think we're 2 slides ahead of this now.
Are we?
Yep.
Oh, all right. I'll just say a little thing then.
Yeah.
A lot of people, as we kind of said before, kind of disregard their Group 2. I like to think of it recently as more of an opportunity rather than a limitation. So, really, what Group 2 forces you to do is actually think about efficiency and like order management. It actually forces you to do it. Whereas usually with your group 1, you just go, I have 10 orders on whatever gun piece I have. It runs up the table. It does whatever else. I can think about my order efficiency in 6 orders when I've only got 4 left.
Realistically, sorry, go ahead, Tristan.
Oh, no, go for it.
Realistically, a really good way to try and think about your group 2 is that it's a toolbox. It's where your group 1 is generally either problem solving or mission related. Your group 2 is like a toolbox in terms of how you build it. It can do a bunch of different things with very limited resources, but you want to look to put pieces there that take advantage of those limited resources much better than, say, like a 4/4 moving specialist, right?
Yep.
Like, you don't want to focus on things that take a lot of orders to do what they need to do. You want very toolboxy pieces that can kind of do a lot with a little, or try and maximize what they have.
Yeah. Personally, probably because I'm not that great of a player, I've found that sometimes I've been able to achieve the same amount with my group 2 as a group 1 if you kind of flub your group 1 a little bit. And that's probably because when I started my turn, I was already conscious of the limitations of my group 2, and I already kind of had a more realistic plan that included a little bit, more risk management, more failure states built into that. Is it the more difficult of the 2 groups to build? Probably,
Yes.
to do it really, really well.
Yes. I think to hit the same level of efficiency as a group 1, it's more difficult because there's less slop that you have to hide behind. Like you said, with group 1, if you've got attack pieces in group 1, you can usually run out of stuff to do with that attack piece before you run out of orders.
Yep.
Group 2, you usually run out of orders before you run out of attack you want to do. So you have to build it more efficiently than group 1.
Yeah. Often we have like kind of straightforward goals for group 1. Like my turn 1, Norkis is going to run in and eat you. Whereas
Yes.
Being able to recognize the role that your group 2 is going to play overall in your turn 1 and your turn 2s is going to lead to way more of a balanced list rather than just I chuck my flash pulses and my TR bots in here and then I kind of forget about it.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we defined group 2.
Yep.
Building group 2s.
Yeah. So this came from a discussion on helping some of the people build lists on our Discord. Some of the problems that can come up with group 2 is either you have too many orders and not enough troops who want to spend them, or not enough orders and too many troops that want to spend them. And it's finding the right balance between those two. Because if you have too many orders, they're then wasted. No one's going to spend them. If you have too many troops that want to spend the orders, then they would be better off, some of them in group 1, where you can spend orders on all the troops you want to spend on.
I think that's one of the defining aspects that comes with players that stay with a faction for a long time. They really figure out what they can do with certain units, and they figure out that their group 2 is as efficient as they can build it. Whereas the first time you build a list, sometimes you're not quite sure what units you want to be in your group 2 and what you want to be in group 1, and then it kind of plays a little bit awkwardly. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I find that as I explore a faction, my group 2 becomes less malleable because it is like the attack piece might change, but the bulk of group 2 is fairly consistent across lists, whereas group 1 changes far more.
Yep. Some common pitfalls with some very beginner group 2s. As we mentioned before, dumping grounds for ARO or just impetuous pieces. Chucking 3 flash pulse bots in there, it's fine. If there isn't anything in there to use those 3 flash pulse orders, it could be a waste.
Don't listen to the N4 Shazvasti player that was like, you just put 4 tigers in group 2 and then you're done.
4 tigers and an Icadron, that's it.
Yeah, 4 tigers and an Icadron, that's all you need.
Yeah, trying to do a group 1 job with a group 2. For example, very recently I chucked a linked picture in a group 2 that had 6 orders. I spent, 2 orders moving up, 2 orders putting down a picture, and then I didn't have enough orders to reliably killer hack what I wanted to do. So make sure that you're keeping your expectations for your group 2 in a spot. And then one that's very common with beginners, treating your 2 groups as having separate game plans rather than a synergistic one. So as Jordan was mentioning, your group 2 is a toolbox. You might put vision control and stuff in there. It's important that your group 2 can have a plan to help your group 1.
Yes, and work with it. Neither group is going to be able to solve all the problems, but if you can make it such that group 1 can solve group 2's problems and group 2 can solve group 1's problems, then they can set the board state up for the other group.
Yeah. All right.
So, got an example of too many orders. So we've got a group with 2 Icadrons, 2 Imidrons, and an R-drone. 5 orders, and no one wants to spend them.
What does this group do? Nothing.
Yes, yeah. It's like, what does it do? It fuels.
It's a mobile
there.
repeater delivery system.
Yes. 5 orders, and 3 of the models don't want to spend them, and 2 of the models can't spend them.
Yep. That's a bad group 2, guys.
Yes.
I've seen group 2s like very close to this before.
Yeah. So this is an example we're talking about not enough orders for the models that want to spend them. So we've got a Greif operator impersonator, an overdrawn HRMC, a Fracta hacker, a Vector Spitfire, and Kernow with nanoscreen and plasma rifle. One of those models isn't even starting on the board. And all 4 of them that start on the board want to do something. They want to spend orders. And there's not going to be enough orders to do everything that each one of those models wants to do.
This is also more than half of your list in group 2. 5 models.
This was created just for this. I couldn't find any examples of group 2s from dredging the various Infinity Discords that were bad enough as a bad example. So I had to create one, which is probably good for the community.
Yeah. Like, for reference, you want 1, maybe 2 of these troops in this group, and the rest should be in group 1.
Yes.
I think a good example of what you're pointing to is if you have a group 2 tag, don't put your engineer in the same group as the tag.
Yeah.
Because you're basically siphoning orders and you're getting punished for taking, like, oh, my tag got hacked. I need to spend 2 orders on this engineer to heal the tag. Now the tag doesn't have any orders to fuck off. So, things like that.
So, how can you avoid these? Make a plan for your group 2. While you're writing your list, like 2 questions that I ask myself when I'm writing my lists, looking at group 2. If I go first, how do I spend the orders in group 2? And if I go second, how do I spend the orders in group 2? Really simple, but easy to overlook.
Yeah. Again, group 2s exist to support group 1s. Achieving a mission is an overall objective. So one thing that Jordan does that not enough players do is you can go back and forth between spending orders in each group. Very big thing that new players do is they'll go group 1, I activate my attack piece, I spend all 10 orders, and then I go, oh, I could have really easily dealt with this with my group 2. And doing that will really emphasize the strengths and the efficiency of that group 2. For example, your opponent reveals a camo hacker against your attack piece, so you use your group 2 killer hacker to deal with it before moving on. Or throwing a smoke to stop that newly revealed Noctifer from getting another ARO on your tag or whatever is running across the table.
Yeah. I think a really important thing for like people to remember as well with their group 2 is you do need to be dialed in on what your group 2 is trying to achieve. Like, if it is, I'm planning on throwing out 2 turrets a turn, or if it's, I'm planning on supporting a tag or a secondary attack piece like that, you need to be really dialed in on like what that group is going to do and how you can best maximize it. Because if you try and do too many things with a group 2, you're going to end up with the situation that Nick has printed above here, in that you just have too many things that all want orders and you're not going to be able to support them efficiently. It's part of why I really like the 9-6 split as well, because if you sort of realize that if you're going second, or even if you're going first, if you kind of realize I need an extra order for my attack piece, or this group 2 piece is really optimized to take on what my opponent is putting on the table, I can move it into group 1 and then give it more orders to play with. Or I can move something from group 1 down, but it's more so that moving something from group 2 up, because you can take better advantage of it.
Yeah. I think with a 9-6 split, you have the ability to put one more attack piece into group 2 than you probably would normally want. And then, like I said, once you see the board state, figure out which of those group 2 attack pieces should have been in group 1 and just move it there.
One of my lovely dirty things I love to do when I play Cosmo is, since Equip Mirage 5 is 2 separate units once you're in the game, you chuck either Marga or Durok into group 1, and then you've effectively got all of your orders to spend on Mirage 5 instead of either a group 2s or a group 1s. So that's a really important thing as well. 9-6, as Jordan said, it gives you that ability, if you're going first, to put something into group 1, which might seem niche, but can actually be really, really important.
People came in here thinking this was going to be an episode about Group 2. It's not. I'm just gonna fucking convert everyone to a 9-6 order split.
Wow.
You will join the church.
Another thing that beginners should kind of be focusing on, and Group 2 is a fantastic spot to start, is pre-counting your orders when you're planning on do something. If you take that extra 30 seconds to count, it's going to take me 3 orders to kind of get here on average, and then it'll probably take me 2 orders to kill that. Does that leave me enough orders to retreat? Blah, 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 blah. Group 2 is the perfect spot to start practicing that before you start going into Group 1. Group 1 might be a bit too much, but yeah.
It's just good habit building. Like, another really good thing to do in that scenario as well, if you have like a tag, like a cutter or a seraph, something that is either like hypermobile or it has a marker state to defend itself. Something really good to do, especially if you're running it in group 2, which both of those tags can do really efficiently for different reasons, is before you start that attack run, you set aside 2 of those orders that you have in that group, and you're like, these are my retreat and recamo orders, or in the case of the seraph, these are my move 32 inches back to safety orders. And just getting into the habit of like automatically setting aside those 2 orders, and it sets you up really well, because it means that you're not going to suddenly run out of orders with a tag exposed in the midfield or a cutter outside of its camo state. You're always making sure that you have the ability to like put your toys away as safely as possible by, at the start of an attack run, grabbing 2 orders and going, putting these aside. These aren't going anywhere.
Yep. And some people might be tempted to kind of push that little bit extra with the cutter or the seraph, but once you try it and you understand that spending those 2 orders has made your opponent spend 5 orders just to try and deal with your cutter or your seraph, really puts it in perspective of how important it is to actually, take a foot off the accelerator and, go back.
Yes.
So, going second, how do you spend the orders in Group 2? Another important thing is that you have to recognize, what it is, like what's okay to lose in that turn 1 alpha. You'll come up against really, really good players, and if they see your courtesy list and they see that there's only, there's 4 things fueling this one unit, potentially focusing on that could render you worse off, because you can't spend those other 4 orders on anything efficient. So it comes back to having the appropriate amount of tools in that group 2, maybe not just orders fueling one unit, but just that toolbox again.
Yes. Yeah. So let's go through and build a group 2. So I'm going to start off with an Icadron and an Ardra. So a baggage bot and a flash bot. It's got 2 orders and absolutely no plan on how to use them, but it's a good start. So let's add something in there that can use the orders, something that would be appropriate for a group 2. So we've added Dr. Worm with marksman rifle turrets and a slave drone. So now, if we go first, the plan can be for Dr. Worm to deploy a turret, reload, and then deploy a second turret. 3 orders done, and they were used efficiently. If we go second, Dr. Worm can either repair or heal whatever needs to be healed, and then spend the rest of his orders deploying turrets. Or turrets.
Yep.
So this has a good plan to start with, but it hasn't reached the level where it's now interacting with Group 1 yet. It's self-sufficient, but like was mentioned previously, if they look at that and go, if I kill Dr. Worm, then I've nullified 2 orders that can no longer be used. That group could fall apart with one wound.
Yep.
So let's make this spicier. We've now added a Rodok duo. The Rodok Hacker with Upgrade Trinity and the Rodok Spitfire with an X-Visor. So we've now got 5 orders. If we go first, we can look for any weaknesses or misdeployments that our opponents did, and either send the Rodok Spitfire in, or have Group 1 make a hole where we can send the Rodok Spitfire in, and put Burst 4.5 in places that the opponent doesn't want it. They can also, if the opponent, say, kept their head down, go up and do objectives with the Hacker, and they still have the speed, like you mentioned, to retreat. If the Rodoks don't have the opportunity to use their orders, or there's just not a good board state and you'd rather keep them back, your backup plan could be Dr. Worm spams turrets. Similarly, if we go second, can start off, are there any critical models that are down? Dr. Worm can bring them back up. Then look for, did my opponent overextend? Did they leave models out in the in awkward places? Can Group 1 make an entry point to send the Rodoks in? If so, they can go in, or they can do objectives, still retreat, and if you have any orders left over, Dr. Worm throws out turret.
I'm really going to be sick of hearing that this edition. Oh, I've got 3 orders. I may as well shoot out 2 turrets.
Yeah, turret reload turret is just going to become the bane of some people's existence.
Someone should print a shirt. Turret reload.
We need
turret.
a shirt. There's got to be a shirt. Just turret reload turret.
Yeah, the thing I love about this group 2 is the redundancy. Realistically, you have to lose both Rodoks and Dr. Worm to make this group relatively useless. But at the same time, you could lose one Rodok, and still that lone Rodok is useful. Like having an 8, they're Super Jump 8, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
So having either an 8/8 Specialist or an 8/8 Spitfire is always going to be useful, even if it's not linked. And obviously, Dr. Worm putting out turrets is always going to be good. Even if you lose the order generators in the Icadron and the R-Drone, that still gives you orders, since the Rodoks are so fast, to do something. And Dr. Worm can still put out turret. And if there's if there's an Icadron in the other group, potentially, he can still put out another turret, maybe.
Yeah, because the Rodok duo can function effectively on 3 orders a turn. Do they like doing it? No. Can they? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they can function on 3 orders.
It's definitely something to look at with Group 2s as well, is that I often don't see people trying to get... It's rarer than I would think to see them try and fit like a little Link Team in there. Link Teams are very efficient to try and fit into Group 2 because they require less orders to function than individual models do. And while certain Link Teams are definitely less popular than they were in the previous edition, it is still something I definitely think is going to take time to really rise up to the top, which is just like either efficient little duos or even like a Haris team just sort of living in Group 2 and living very well.
Yeah, in N4 we saw I enjoyed seeing the Haris in Group 2. It seemed like a fairly good place, order efficient. Now with duos in N5, it's a perfect place to fit in 1 or 2 duos.
Yeah.
Because like I said, they're order efficient.
No, I think that's the key there. Duos being non-existent in N4 means that, you know, a Group 2 was probably a Harris and filler, whereas now you can have a duo Dr. Worm and filler, or you can have 2 duos and filler. The efficiency for the Group 2 has been pumped up even more.
Yes.
There's going to be a Fire Teams episode where we're going to talk about a lot of this as well. It's going to be great.
We could rant for 10 hours on Fire Teams. I love Fire Teams.
It's going to be great.
All right.
So, what type of stuff do we normally see in a Group 2? Can start with, like I mentioned, toolbox support. You've got your unlinked doctors and engineers with helper bots, your Evo hackers, and just kind of your deployables, mine layers, or just people who can lay out mines, turrets, drop fairs, all the fun stuff that it is very easy to just burn orders with them to put up stuff that will cost your opponent more orders than you spent.
Yep. I would call them classic examples of units that don't get orders unless opportunities arise. Specifically, like doctors, you're not really... With the addition of turrets, it's a little bit different, but generally doctors, you're not spending orders on them unless something is hurt.
I'm definitely seeing a lot more engineers in Group 2 than I am currently seeing doctors in Group 2.
The turrets, I think, are the sole reason for
turrets are like a singularly divisive part of N5 so far that have in some ways honestly warped the game around themselves a little bit, which I think is really interesting to see where that ends up going in terms of if CB decide they need to intervene in it, or if it's a case of like, they'll figure it out and work itself out eventually.
Well, that's the thing, like back in N4, if you had 3 spare orders or whatever, and you kind of had a mine layer, he would go and throw down some mines. Whereas now you have an engineer and he throws down some turrets. And we can definitely say one of those is better than the other.
Yes. And the reload changes of taking it from a full order to a short skill makes it even better, because now you can move an extra short movement between where you're putting the deployables down.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So next we've...
Go for it.
Okay. So next we've got our efficient solo attack pieces or objective pieces. So these are your impersonators, your infiltrating specialist or attack pieces, your bikes, in N5, your super jumpers, and potentially your tag or a like active lieutenant.
Yeah.
Yep, I definitely think the land of the Group 2 tag is the land of the LT tag. Again,
or it's your NCO tag with tack away.
Yeah, NCO is similar. We've got a lot more NCO tags now, but just having the tag that gets the extra order, so it effectively has 7 orders, even though there's only 6 things in there, is really nice. Again, just make sure put your engineer in the other group.
Yes.
Yeah. And something else to really take away from that part in particular is that efficiency logo. Something you'll notice about almost every troop that we've sort of listed there is they either start halfway up the board, start on your opponent's deployment line, or move 6 to 8 inches with a short skill. They are incredibly quick or efficient in terms of how they get to a target or a location, meaning they require less orders to get where they're going, do what they want to do, and potentially get back to safety as well.
Yes.
So that, again, the the limiting factor of Group 2 is the number of orders you have available to you, and then you need to look for ways to mitigate that while still getting the most out of it that you possibly can. I'm going to keep harping on this point.
Oh,
No, it's a very important point because I've been recently re-experimenting with block tars. I've been putting block tars into Group 2 because as we know, they are super jump and they have tack aware, so they're extremely efficient. I've discovered that I would love a Boktar to be in Group 2 for supplies, since with six orders, it's really easy to run up, grab a box, and run back. But since playing Cryogenics again for Border Bash, I want my Boktar to run up and press 2 buttons and run back. Whereas
and it needs more orders for that to happen. It needs more
orders. So the role of that unit changes from mission to mission. Your Group 2 might be really great for this, for example, supplies. If I'm playing Cryo, I kind of want my Boktar in Group 1 because I want the orders to actually run away once I press those 2 buttons.
Man, that sounds like a great reason to have a 9-6 order split, so you can start the Boktar in Group 2 and then on turn 1 potentially spend a command token, move it into Group 1 and get the flexibility.
Hey.
Yeah, but that's assassins, and their command token economy is slightly different.
I'll have to try it, Jordan. All I know is I played a game of Cryo, my Boktar run pressed 2 buttons, he had to kill a flash pulse on the way, which meant...
he was just in the midfield after that?
Yeah, he just was next to the HVT, he pulled out on the enemy side of the table. Which is fine. It's fine. Come on. He survived a slap by Norkius.
Shouldn't have.
No, he should have. He should have. It was a 50-50. Anyway, keep in mind the goal of the Group 2. If like the mission is order intensive, don't put the thing that's going to do the mission where it doesn't have enough orders to do the mission.
So next up, following on that, we've got our efficient duos and hereses. Again, focusing on that efficient keyword. Similar to the efficient solo attack pieces and objective pieces, you're getting the order efficiency out of the fact that they're duoed or heresed, and you've got the fire team to do more with your orders than just by spending them individually. So similar role, either like thinking of the Rodok duo we had in the first example. You've got an attack piece in there. You've got a specialist in there. They can go up, do work, and come back to safety.
Yep. I find in a lot of cases when we take Group 2 duos, at least when I do, they often do something that the main group doesn't. For example, my CanCon list had a bolt duo. That bolt was my only realistic source of long-range AP, and like being able to shoot a warband without risking a crit smoke dodge ruining that interaction. So I had to keep in mind when I was spending my orders on the bolt, is this something that I have to do with the bolt? Am I just doing it because it's there? Or should I really focus this on doing what the bolts can do that the Group 1 can't do? Anything to add, Jordan? You're looking very dead.
No, I think that's a really good way to sort of like to view it just in general. I think the efficient duos is something that's definitely going to evolve over the course of like these initial like months of N5, where people are going to figure out where they can squeeze the most efficiency out of their duos, to where like I think currently there's a lot of focus on making sure you get access to that special die, but I think potentially as we move on, we're going to focus less on the special die and potentially more on like just 2 really efficient models paired up. I think, for instance, like Hector at CanCon was pairing up the Lieutenant Tikbalang with the Firefly Mind Layer, and that's not getting a special die, but boy howdy is that fucking duo doing a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. You're basically going, I want to move this model up the field. I also want to move this model up the field. Hey, let's carpool.
Right. 2 great tastes go great together.
Yeah. So we've next got our solo ARO pieces. So stuff that you kind of want to plop down and you don't really need to move other than maybe changing its fire lane.
Yep.
I'm thinking like, I know not many people play with them, like Tank Hunter missile or Tank Hunter or
Don't
Tank Hunter
talk.
missile
Don't
or
make us talk about the tank hunter. Val's going to get upset again.
That's true, Rachel.
so stuff that you can kind of plop down. Your opponent has to do a fair amount of work to unpick it, but it can spend its order if it's need to, but it doesn't usually need to spend its order. Kind of like a more effective cheerleader.
You can also put good ARO pieces in there, like your TR bot Thunderbolts.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember, for all our new players out there, camo is defined by group. So you have to tell your opponent what group what camo is in. So if you decide to split up your camo, it might be easier for a player to determine what's the passive ARO piece and what's kind of the active thing. So often combining the reactive camo, like your Moonrakers and your Strelocks, with the active camo, like Beast Hunters and Striders, will obfuscate your camo game a little bit more and make the group 2 a little bit more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And we're to one of the
hot
one of
topics.
the stars of one of the usual stars of Group 2, warbands. Especially if they're regular, don't overdo it. This is one of the pitfalls Tristan talked about earlier. Dropping too many warbands into Group 2. They're great to have a few in there because they spend orders very well, and they don't usually care about the return trip.
That's it.
Yeah, they're a trait of Group 1. They're not generally best as a defining feature. I would say, especially since, in general, this edition, it seems like cheap warbands, like really cheap, like your cheap irregulars have gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing less with the orders that they have given to them.
Yep.
As a vibe.
Mm-hmm. How was it? Probably the I want to say most common element of a Group 2, the guided missile bot.
Yes.
Most common for certain parts of N4, definitely.
Yeah. Usually this is where, the guided missile bot gets plopped down if you're taking one. Because if it can only do 5 shots per turn because of guided missile limitations, you don't need 10 orders to fuel it.
That's it. And it's often completely unused until something is spotlit.
Yes.
And is one of the most popular targets on the table for certain factions because it makes up a whole game plan. On the flip side, it's really easy once you spotlit something to just spend all your Group 2 orders on missiles without thinking about the rest of your models. So keep that in mind if you have to, if you have to drop your missile on that 4-point Gaki, sometimes it's just not worth it.
Dodge. Oh, look, I'm in your DC.
Cartwheel.
So, next up, Jordan mentioned it, TR bots. With you actually had a good caveat on this one, Tristan.
TR bots, you expect them to be unconscious a lot of the time, so you're rarely going to generate their order if you're going second.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, they're a great place to put it, but
mode.
Great place to put your TR bot, but don't plan their order in your plan for your orders.
Yes. Don't account for that order because you're probably not getting it.
We've got flash bots, baggage bots, the thing, probably war core in that, but I'm not quite sure with the current ITS season if war core goes in with them or not. They might be their own category.
No, war cores are definitely in like a category of their own now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not like factionally defining, but they're definitely considerably better than they were. Like a 3-point Whip 13 specialist is like life altering in some factions.
Specialist operative has to be at least worth 2 points.
Yeah.
Like, double the value for that war core.
Yeah.
Yep. Very common midline ARO pieces is your flash pulse bots. Sensible to fill out a Group 2. because we want our group 1 to be as healthy as possible when we roll around to our turn. And flash pulse bots are the things that are going to die most often. Yeah.
Next up, we've got what I kind of lumped up as midfield stalling pieces. So stuff that's expected to burn several orders of your opponent and then die. Best examples I can come up with are Moonrakers and Gudon. So stuff that will sell their lives for 3 to 4 orders on your opponent's side. And if they do that, perfectly happy.
Yep. Moonrakers are probably like one of the best examples of it. Yellow Birdos as well fits in here very naturally too.
Oh yeah.
And just sometimes these units, all 3 that we've listed, actually kind of have sometimes that little opportunity to have 3 orders spent on them just to drop a shot or a mine or a template somewhere. Very, very useful.
And last up, have the off-board piece, singular.
Yeah,
So
I think this is very much like a Nick special on this one.
So your hidden deploy, your aerial deployment, because it is a smaller group, make sure you count your orders and how many you actually will have on the board. So yes, my experience coming out of CanCon, I'd recommend limiting, especially for newer players, to 1 off-board piece in Group 2. Otherwise, it becomes a very small order pool that fuels stuff that isn't there.
Yep.
Did you start with it? You didn't start with a Group 2 when you versed me, did you, Nick? You started your turn with no Group 2?
No, there was a Group 2 on there, but I think it was only 3 models that started on the table.
Jesus Christ.
And then had multiple aerial deployment in it. Which, yeah, it turns out was something that I should have thought about, and mostly I should have played it before rather than changing my list right before running to CanCon and doing it without practice.
Something I would actually add to this list as well. This might be like a very me specific thing. If I have a Group 1 NCO, then generally my lieutenant will be in Group 2. If I have a Group 2 NCO, my lieutenant will be in Group 1. I feel like that kind of like that pairing deserves its own potential little spot, maybe.
Yep.
Because I don't know about you guys, but my brain makes the feel good chemicals when the lieutenant and the NCO are in different groups because it feels more efficient in my head. I don't know if it actually is, but brain makes the good chemicals. So,
well, especially if you've got a lieutenant who can use their order but doesn't necessarily need to.
Yeah.
Then now your lieutenant order is getting closer to a strategos order.
Yep.
Where you can pick and choose where it comes in and how it's used.
Yep.
That's one of the things about the Seraph as well specifically, is while I think it probably works best as a Group 1 piece if I think about it a lot, if you put it in Group 2 with the Knight Commander in Group 1, if you do a 9-6 split, that Seraph has like what, 9 orders that it gets to spend in Group 2. And when you tell people that, it frightens them.
Yep. And then they don't dock from they dock from Group 2, and then Group 1 has 9 orders on a Crux Knight or something ridiculous. Or a Sepulchre or something, you know.
Something to be aware of, though, if you do have like an attack piece in that Group 2, if it is essentially living off the 5 to 6 orders that you have in that group, just remember your opponent, if you're going first, they can very easily just dock from Group 2, and that attack piece is gimped very, very, very efficiently.
Yep.
Going from like 5 to 6 orders to 3 to 4, like, cuts the legs out of a lot of pieces in the game.
Yep. You know, I would agree with that, but I would add on the caveat that I think that's part of the mind game you can play with list building.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if Group 2 has a really scary attack piece, but then it also has some toolbox units that, if you don't have enough orders for an attack run, will just, you spend it throwing out mines, or...
It just comes straight back to your Group 2, Nick, where if the opponent's really scared of those Rodox and docks Group 2, Dr. Worm is just pooping out turrets.
Yes, exactly. Totally. And now you've got full orders on Group 1.
Yep. All right.
So, went out to the Discord servers of various flavors, all of them Infinity, and dredged up a bunch of lists and pulled out their group twos. So here, let's talk about some of these, both what their plan is, but also how they will expect to interact with group one.
Yeah.
So first example we have is from TAC. We have a Dynamo Paramedic, 2 Conductor Camouflage Infiltrators, a Tank Hunter Missile Launcher, and a Dog Warrior. So 4 regular orders, 1 irregular order, and 2 impetuous. So for turn 1, I'm seeing either the Dog Warrior. Well, Dog Warrior is probably going to go up and do vision control. And after group 1 has the option of making a hole for it, the Dog Warrior can just go up there and put in 6 effective orders of super jumping up and chain rifling through their backline if they get there.
Yep, and you have 2 good ARO pieces, 2 of them being sort of discouraging ARO pieces, and one of them being like a hard camo ARO piece. And then if you need to do mission things, you have, look at that, it's an 8/4 moving specialist that has very relevant specialist keywords for missions like cryogenics and supplies especially.
Well, and with the Dynamo, correct me if I'm wrong, they have Mind Dispenser.
They do.
Yes.
So if you have nothing better to do and your opponent has locked down the board and group 1 can't break it, you can just have your Dynamo throw out mines halfway across the board. Yep. So it has good attack plans, it has good objective plans, and it also has plans for, I guess, kind of fiddling around and burning orders.
Yep. The only thing I would attribute from this is if I was just looking at this, I don't think I would expect to see much camo in group 1. Because, for example, if you decide to take a Spetsnaz or Vasily who have decoy, you're kind of announcing that that camo marker pair is either Vasily or Spetsnaz, and the other one is probably a tank hunter.
Yeah, it might not. It's only got 5 models in it, so it might not be bad to get another Neg 3 camo marker in there, where now you can start to play mind games inside your group 2.
Yeah. And the other thing is, obviously, those conductors are kind of destined to die at some point.
Yes.
So you could start your turn 2 only having 3 or 2 regulars and an irregular, which almost hits that point where you have the too few orders and too many models, because the Dog Warrior will impetuous and irregular, and you can only spend 2 orders.
You pick your piece at that point.
Yes.
You're like, either the Dog Warrior is going to move with those orders, with those 4 total orders, he's going to move, 30-something inches chain rifling stuff, or you're going to do stuff with the Dynamo Paramedic. So it's just about making a choice at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, and even at that, if they lose both conductors and are just at that 2 regular, 1 irregular, they've still got 2 impetuous orders in there on units that are fast.
That's very true.
It has far more orders than it looks like, even once you've halved the models.
Yes. Yep. Never underestimate those impetuous orders.
Yes.
All right.
Next up, Jordan, you might recognize this one, because I think you sent this to me. We have a Morats, Group 2, with a Boltrak HRMC.
There's a Boltrak in this list. This is definitely not one I would have sent you. There would be a Raicho here.
4 Dodarazi and a Nicotron. So we've got 6 regular orders. We've got 1 tag. We've got 4 warbands that can form 2 duos, or use their impetuous, or form
an
a
NCO
core,
tag,
or
an
a
NCO
Harry's.
tag very especially as well.
Yep, got the NCO tag, and then for a 6th member, a baggage bot that generates orders.
This looks really silly until you realize that those Datarazi have effectively 6 orders, and they're on boat, like they're everywhere, and they can get everywhere.
Like insane fire teaming capabilities with them as well.
Yeah.
Like if you put them as two duos, even if you like legitimately, right, you take like your 4 impetuous activations and then spend 1 or 2 command tokens, like it's worth it, honestly, to get like the most efficiency you can out of them. And Moirites especially aren't an incredibly command token hungry faction, unless like your core loses a bunch of face-to-face rolls. But you know, in that case, it's like, oh no.
Yep. But effectively, every single model except the Icadron here is happy to have orders, but the bull track is pretty much the only one demanding orders.
And even then, right, if you spend no regular orders... Sorry about that, Nick. Do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Even then, with the bull track, if you spend no orders on the bull track other than what it itself generates or can use, it still has 3 orders. Potentially 4 if you have Kornak and don't use Strategos for some reason, but generally 3 orders on its own, which is great. That's still, 3 orders is, 18 inches of super jump plus 3 HRMC bursts. That's fucking great.
Well, it also has the option, if you want to just, like, if your opponent has null deployed, you can jam 4 Dotarazi up into them and just keep the bull track back, you know, even out of line of fire, and spend its tactical wear to put in suppressive.
Yep.
It's got 2 very distinct attack vectors, and neither of them is going to go down easily. One is a tag, so you need to do 3 wounds to it, and the other one is Dotarazi, and you have to kill each of them.
Yep.
This does veer a little bit into the too many warbands, almost, but because they're Datarazzi and you can duo them freely in Moirites, it makes a good argument for itself.
I think it only works because it's Dotarazi.
Yeah.
Partly because they link very freely, and they're regular.
Yes.
Usually it's the irregular warbands that will tank a group 2 and make it not functional.
Yep.
One other note I would say it here, this has some of the most reliable smoke in the game.
Yes.
Oh god, yeah, it is the most reliable smoke in the game, right? Other than like
I think other than the bear.
The bear is the most reliable, but you also have Perseus, which gets the natural burst.
Perseus, Perseus gets burst 2 plus a special die with ease.
But this is
very close.
For the cost, it's definitely the cheapest reliable smoke. On top of already being the best warband in the game.
Yeah, like unquestionably, I think at this point. Like in N4, there was like good, like the McCool was probably better. In N5, there is no question. The Datarazzi is just the best warband in the game.
Yeah.
And it costs, what, 1 point more than a Vanguard?
No, it's the same points.
Same points.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That says more about Vanguards being a little bit expensive than it does about the Datarazzi being cheap.
I guess. I mean, there's pretty much nothing you can say wrong about a Datarazzi.
There is no downside to the Datarazzi. They're a religious troop. Oh no. Has everything. Oh god. Alright, what else do we have?
Yeah, next up we've got a Assassins. This one has a guided missile launcher, a flashbot, a Fide, and then 2 chain rifle jammer mutts.
I hate this.
This is like crying out for like 1 additional regular order of a 9-6 split.
Yes,
sorry, what?
I would absolutely agree. It would really do with like one
like
more
Fanus remote, right? Like
like a second Fanus.
So we go back to basics. We go turn 1, great, we have a Fide. Turn 2, right, I'm either really putting my Fide in a safe spot, in which case, once a Flash Pulse dies and there's only 2 regular orders, the Fide isn't going to be able to do much anyway. Or I'm putting the Fide in like an aggressive spot, it's dying, and then on my turn, I have a missile bot and shit all.
I mean, if you're positioning a Fide aggressively, right, you're treating it as a casualty that is at minimum, you know, eating 3 orders off your opponent of like discover, shoot, right?
Yeah. I think this is just begging. This is a group 2 begging to go first. it does need a little something else that can spend the orders.
Like the mutts, depending on the board state and how much Group 1 can suppress arrows, the mutts can use their impetuous and their regulars to get into awkward places and put up jammer fields. But that's going to rely on Group 1. And the mutts would probably be better doing that if they were the more expensive smoke version.
The mutts also want to like stay reasonably close to your DZ because you want to keep them in range of that baggage bot in order to like refill those jammers.
Yeah. The mutts are realistically one of the only things Assassin has to like really deter those drop troops away. And even things like, well, Norkius is a bit weird, but if someone accidentally lands that jammer on the Norkius and he goes in, like he gets turned off, that's really, really, really good. Throwing the mutts up the table sometimes is a problem because your opponent, the table is wide enough that you can just avoid them realistically most of the time. I'm kind of not feeling it.
It really feels like it needs one more order, and
it needs like
after
a
talking about it,
J or something.
Yeah, it needs something that spends the orders after the Fide goes down.
Yep.
So the other thing, look at this. I would also think that Group 1 would be going heavy into the hacking game.
Yes.
So running multiple barids that are linked to really get those pictures out there and pushing on the guided missile game.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd kind of have to, which kind of means it feels like the game plan is I'm spending my Group 1 trying to spotlight things.
Yes.
Which sometimes forcing that isn't the best thing to do. It also feels like Group 1 has to have a lot of expensive stuff in it because there's only 58 points in this Group 2. So
that's a good point.
It probably has the tag. It probably has a really like other expensive Harris or duos or something like that with Lasiques and Muyibs and Asawira, which is leaving less space for those hackers. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's more a Assassin's list building thing than it is a Group 2 thing. But yeah, I think
you can speak on.
I think we can all agree that this is kind of screaming out for that extra thing.
It feels like it just needs one more thing in there that's regular and can spend orders. Yeah.
Realistically, and this is going to sound funny, most of the time that missile launcher bot is just an expensive flash pulse.
Sure.
Well, if you're going to ARO with it, it's an expensive flash pulse. Otherwise, it's just an expensive baggage bot.
Like, I understand where you're coming from. What are we at next?
We've got a White Company list, or Group 2 from White Company.
This tilts the shit out of me.
So,
this is something.
We've got 2 Peacemakers with Oxbot mine layers, a Missile Bot, a Warcore, and Carmen and Batard.
Why aren't the Peacemakers next to each other in the list?
I left it that way because I didn't notice it until after I'd taken the screenshot, and I was too lazy to reload the list.
It irritates me so much.
It does, and yes, every time I see it, I wish I had spent the time. But
this might seem hot, but after having used Peacemakers, I think they are one of the units you want to spend orders on. So I think this Group 2 has too much stuff in it that wants orders.
I would move one Peacemaker into Group 1, definitely. Like, because they start so far up the board and they move so quickly, like 5 orders is a really good amount. Speaking from experience, it's a really good amount for a Peacemaker specifically. I had a lot of success versus I think it was Tunguska, where it just spent 5 orders and it killed Perseus and a Stemplazond. It's like, yep.
I'll take
good job.
Yeah, I think it depends on how the player's running them, because this looks like they're going to be running them more defensively.
Yep. In which case, it kind of feels like it's the same problem as the Assassins one, where you've got Warcore Clipper just kind of chilling out, doing nothing. Carmen's getting all of the orders, and the Peacemakers are just chilling there being mine layer template template throwers for the turn. So you could start your second turn potentially with only like 2 regulars or like one regular and 2 irregulars, which means even with Carmen's Impetuous, she's kind of lacking for orders.
Yeah, it seems like it's working hard on you either fuel Carmen or you don't. But you're right, the Peacemakers are not written in here as attack pieces. They're written in here as gum up the midfield and delay and cost orders as your opponent comes in.
Another thing that I'd like to propose, and I could be wrong about this, is missile bots only having 3 regular orders to begin with is potentially a mistake. You might need 4 to 5 for redundancy of, the missile bots in bad range, or, he just got lucky the first or second time, or whatever. Sometimes missiles take 3 or 4 tries. And if you lose one Peacemaker and you realistically only have 2 tries before you start throwing command tokens at the situation, that might not be the best. So I'm not sure. I'm not the guided missile master. Jordan is, but it doesn't. It seems like you could potentially change that.
Yeah, good points. Next up, we have a Shinden Butai. And this is a good example of what we're talking about with the active lieutenant. So we have a Hatimoto Spitfire Lieutenant +1 order, a missile bot, a Taishen Killer Hacker. So that is one of their aerial deployments.
I love it. Sorry, Ivory just posted this group 2 before we got to it and said it was absolutely peak. and Jordan's like, yeah, it's fine.
No, more specifically, I went, yeah, it's fine. Ivory's like, how dare you? I'm like, it's all right.
Oh, sorry, Nick.
Oh, I missed that was... what? Okay, so yeah, the aerial deployment Killer Hacker, a Evo Hacker, so Evo Hacker baggage, a Flashbot, and then a Monstrucker with armed turrets and drop bears. Or sorry, AP rifle, armed turrets, and drop bears, plus a Palbot.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
You have that I know Ivory's list. It has that group 1 duo with pitches, so you've got that group 2 potential with the Killer Hacker as well to make that a little bit more efficient. The Hatamoto has potentially 7 to 8 orders for itself to do stuff. This missile bot has 5 full regular orders to do stuff if it needs to. If the Hatamoto doesn't absorb all the orders, you've got the Evo bot just to either put out firewall or marksmanship bonuses for whatever. Sensorbot is a fast, speedy specialist, and Monstrucker can poop out turrets next to its baggage friend and be completely happy with that.
Yeah, you've got a lot of models in there that can use orders but don't need to use orders. And if they have a need to use orders, a lot of it's just 1 or 2, and then the rest of the group can still burn what they want.
Yep. Any thoughts, Jordan, on the Shinden Butai group 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Like, not knowing what the rest of the list actually contains, I'm a little bit hesitant on the Hatamoto in Group 2 because it does seem to be one of, like, the centerpiece pieces for the faction. And it seems like one of those pieces where you do kind of want to maximize the number of orders you get to spend on it. And while eight orders is probably enough, but there is enough other stuff in the group to where, like, if you're not putting out 2 Monstrucker turrets a turn, it feels like you're leaving a bit of money on the table. And with the Evo Hacker being there as well, that's almost an order you're automatically using in order to, like, put up the supportware of your choice. So you almost need to subtract an order from what's presented here. Overall, I think it's good, though. Like, again, not knowing what's in Group 1, I would automatically sort of lean towards moving something into Group 1 and moving something down. But yeah, that's just sort of off the cuff.
Yeah, I think my initial thing would be like, if you really want that Hatamoto to have the full order suite and you don't know what's in Group 1, maybe a Yamabushi to replace it.
Yeah, Yamabushi would be sort of where my mind immediately goes to. Or, like, again, even if you are going to... Sorry, Nick, jump.
Oh, okay. Have a note from Ivory in the chat. the Taishan usually is deployed on the table in this group and not aerial deployed.
Yeah. Like, if you are like committing with the TR bot, something to think about, right, is swapping the Hadamoto with the TR bot that you're playing, because you're able to give it marksmanship. Being effectively a BS-14 gun is filling two roles. And I kind of like that flexibility potentially a little more than having the Hadamoto potentially.
Yep.
Yeah. One nice thing with the Monstrucker, like as if she wasn't good enough already at N4.
It has drop bears.
So yes, it's got drop bears. So if you only have 2 orders for her, she can put a turret down and then throw a drop bear out. Whereas other engineers that have just the armed turrets can't spend a second order well. They spend odd numbers of orders, not even numbers of orders. And
Yeah.
she can do whatever she feels like. She can throw out 3 things before she reloads.
To be
The
f-
Monstrucker was bonkers in N4, and it has only gotten better, and that's fucked.
it's as expensive as a regular engineer, but it's basically getting the turret for free just for being a regular, and that a regular order is even more free now than what it was before.
I mean, the Machinist, right, is paying 3
Eight.
points to be regular and have a worse turret.
Yeah.
And not have drop pairs.
And not be
Yeah.
whip
And
13.
be one less whip.
The other thing to mention on that specific note, which I think we'll see beyond with turrets and like having 2 orders, is obviously since you can move, like you can move up and then move back and just throw the turret forward, since most turrets have a bit of a shorter range band.
Yeah.
You don't always have to chuck your turret in a spot where it's going to have a bad range band. So, all right. Ooh, it's me. Gosh. Ooh. Vanilla Pano. So we have a bolt duo of a multi-sniper MSV1 and the Killer Hacker. We have a shooting specialist. We have the Fennec Thunderbolt Mine Layer, the Fennec Disco Baller Fort Observer, and a Warcore. Keep in mind, when I wrote this, the Warcore wasn't a specialist at the time. So you have an active turn duo with Gunfighter and Killer Hacking Device. You have a fast, impetuous specialist close assault unit. You have a second gun in the Fennec Thunderbolt and potential mine layers. You have vision control with your Fennec Fort Observer. And now, technically, the Warcore is a specialist, but it was just filler at the time.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. This really shows how you can make your group 2 efficient with fire teams.
Yeah.
And even being vanilla and only having 2 duos, that it makes a great group 2.
Yep.
And you've still got a Haris or, Pano for vanilla can put in a bunch of solo pieces into group 1 that don't mind being alone.
Yep.
I think, honestly, out of all the generic factions, Vanilla Pano probably has the best duo and Haris options, in my opinion. At least.
I think it's without a doubt, to be honest. They are really,
like I'm
really good.
sure there's probably an argument for something else, but like
Overall, for options,
like linkable helots, with Joan, linkable helots with like a Patsy to make them regular outside of that. Even stuff like pairing them with like a Bulleteer bot as well to move them up into the midfield. And then bolts. I know that some of the Pano players I talked to have been talking about the Kahu duo being something to sort of look at compared to the bolt as well, and being able to make some like interesting duos out of that potentially as well that serve a slightly different role, which I think is good.
Yep. And the ability to slap a tack awareness engineer on anything that is also really good at shooting close up at BS13 with MIM3.
Yep.
Yeah, and realistically, if you really wanted to, you can slap 2 of them on to anything in the Harris option. So, yeah, they're a great
special
options.
die.
And least of all, which is like, we haven't even mentioned it, Vanilla Pano can link an engineer tack aware with a tag.
Yep.
Not very many vanilla factions can do that.
Yeah, I like this group too quite a bit. I think there's a lot going on here that's pretty good. I'd probably swap the Warcore for an actual just flashball spot now, with like the way that it's sort of shaken out with that.
Yep.
Probably the only change off the cuff I would maybe make.
Yep. All right.
So, yes, it's the teacher and me. Okay. Summary. So, Group 2. It's a third of your army. Don't just throw that away. Uh, Make sure that it synergizes with the goals of Group 1 as well. Um, have a plan to spend those Group 2 orders. If you're going first, you should have an idea of what the plan is to spend those orders. And similarly, if you go second, what's the plan to spend the orders? Uh, yeah, don't just throw a bunch of stuff in there and hope it goes well. Have a plan for it.
There is legitimately, you'll become a much better player thinking about how to make a really great Group 2. I know a lot of people might chuck a bunch of stuff in Group 1 because they want the potential of something having 10 orders, but they want everything to have that potential, whereas that's not realistic. You play a lot of Infinity games, and there are a lot of times where there's like a duo that doesn't get touched because you're just doing stuff with other things.
Yeah, and working on building your Group 2 can help you build a better Group 1. Because any of the issues you're having with list building are going to be more apparent in Group 2, where you don't have that 10 order pool to compensate for problems with the group.
I'm sure there are some lists out there that have been designed off of a cool Group 2 idea.
I think so too. I think there's a lot to go on.
Excellent.
I think
Final
Final
thoughts.
Group 2's fucking important. Just, like, it's one of those list building things where, like, once you sort of clock it, it's gonna lead to, like, pretty drastic improvement in terms of, like, how quickly you start making good choices in games, because once you're making good choices in list building, making good choices in games becomes a lot easier.
Yes. Yeah. And also, if you know what you plan to use them to do before the game starts, you're going to play faster because you already know what you intend, and you can make adaptations to that rather than creating it from scratch at the table.
Yeah.
I don't know about
think
you,
I've-
but... Ooh, go on.
I think Ivory raises a pretty good point here. Like, good active Group 2s is the easiest way to sort of add wrinkles to enemy decision making. And then if you have like that sort of nothing burger Group 2, it generally means your opponent has a full complement of orders to do whatever they want with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I play a game with someone, the Group 2s that I am most scared of are those Seraph. There's only 5 models in here, but the Seraph has 8 orders to do something, and I'm like, holy fuck.
What am I doing?
What do I do? Can I survive a Seraph doing something for 8 orders? I don't know.
9 orders if they're using the good split.
9 orders if they're using the good split.
I'm not gonna stop.
Oh, no. Yeah, 9.
But it's got so many orders. Like, the fact I was running the math on it to myself because I was talking about MO a fair bit in the Melbourne chat. Like, the fact that if you set aside just the orders the Seraph itself can use or generate, so that's what, 4 orders in total. That's 8, 16, 24, 32 inches of movement and 4 bursts of shooting as well.
Yeah.
Like, there is nothing in the game that can match that like level of both mobility and gunfighting. It's insane.
Yeah.
Cascuda.
Uh-huh.
Ryan Kirby with a Cascuda. That's my reply to that.
Okay.
No, this has made me want to go focus on Group 2s now.
Yeah.
I feel insufficient.
It's been tough working on this episode while at the same time prepping for the 150 point limited insertion.
Yeah.
Slow grow, like, I want to work on Group 2s.
Donovan, generally, I'm not a fan of the 8-7 split because I think that when you try and have 2 groups of nearly equal capability, you end up with 2 groups that don't generally play the game as well as you could. Trying to make them too equal generally leads to like very unfocused list design.
I think on that point it leads to lists that don't synergize well. They feel like they're doing their own thing.
Mm.
And even if like a lot of lists will have a thing off the table, if I dock one from each group, you're effectively only having 6 orders in both groups, which I'm not super scared of.
I think the 8-7 split is more vulnerable to having just enough order generators picked off of each to neuter both of them.
Yeah.
I will admit, I think it does work with certain lists. Namely being Val's Tack. Unfortunately, it works somehow, but that's more of a him thing rather than an 8-7 thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely has a place, but it's one of those things that you should have a very good reason of why you're running it, rather than I couldn't figure out how to balance my groups.
Yeah, it's not a situation of, should I run 8-7? If you're doing it, you're not questioning why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, thank you all for listening to another exciting episode of Loss of Lieutenant. If you would like to become a patron, you can head over to patreon.com/lossoflieutenant. And for $3 a month, you can join us in the live studio recording and ask us very silly questions about the things that we are talking about. This is the first in kind of a longer series where we're going to be discussing some more beginner intermediate aspects of the game that potentially doesn't get enough light shone on it. So hopefully you're all looking forward to that. I'm not sure what our next episode is, but it's probably going to be Fire Teams.
I think the Fire Teams episode is a good place to go next.
Yeah. Fire Teams is, since it's part of every faction now, it all encompassing, it applies to everyone who plays the game.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for listening. I've been Tristan.
I've been Nick.
And I've been Jordan.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.